Our final panel discussion of the day is Interactive Session, Innovative Funding Models in the Power Sector. And I'd like to welcome on stage our moderator of the same. Let's put our hands together as I welcome Mr. Sushil Bhagat, CFO, Hindustan Power Projects. Thank you for joining us, sir. We know it's the final session of the day, more the reason for all of us to really put all our energies here. So let's truly put our hands together as I welcome on stage our panelists, Mr. S.B. Nair, Chairman, IIFCL. Thank you for joining us. We also have with us Dr. Pawan Singh, Director, PDC Financial Services. I'd like to welcome Mr. Ajay Gupta, Head Infrastructure Finance, HDFC Bank. And in the next few minutes, Mr. Kuljit Singh, Partner Ernst & Young, will be joining us. But till then, I'd like to request Mr. Bhagat to please proceed with the panel discussion.
Shall we begin? Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think in this last panel, one of the participants is on the way, Kuljit Singh, his partner EY. I think he should be joining a few minutes late, but it's indeed our honor to have Nair Saab, who is Chairman of IIFCL, and we also have PTC Financial Services Director of Finance, Dr. Pawan Singh, and Ajay Gupta, who is Head Infrastructure Finance of HDFC Bank. I think in the morning sessions we have been talking about, how much renewable is possible, how much power is possible, where is the value chain. But I think indeed what puts this together is the funding options and funding depth both. In the last few months, there have been very high voltage developments on the funding side, and Nair Saab has actually been leading that. He is practically the author of it. So maybe it will be very fitting for all of us to understand from his perspective how he has been thinking in his mind over the last few months to put all this together to provide such a huge funding available to our sector. And it's indeed good that we have, apart from him, on the panel a lender cum investment banker, that is HDFC Bank, and one more person who will be a consultant and an investment banker who will be joining a little later. So maybe we should begin with Nair sir.
Thank you very much. I would like to respond, in three different aspects. First one, I will tell you about a couple of my suggestions which got incorporated in the last budget, and now it is RBI has issued guidelines on those. Secondly, I will, discuss about what is going on. I was made chairman of a committee to examine and make suitable recommendations for the Power Producers Association's demands. So some of my not all, but some of my recommendations I'll speak, and also I'll explain my logic. And lastly, of course, I will talk about an impending I won't call it a crisis, it's issue which is coming up before us, what I normally refer to as the elephant in the room, which I think people are not seeing it well enough. So let me come to the first issue. In the last budget, I had recommended, and it got incorporated subsequently, one is what is now called, subsequently called the 5x25 scheme. Second of my suggestion was that, the project finance, especially power sector, normally, world over it is done on fixed rate basis. I have seen before my own eyes projects being planned at 9-10%, and 3 years later it got up to 13-14%, and simply there is no money to pay the project. There is no cash flow to meet that commitment. This normally doesn't happen internationally because, they get a fixed rate commitment and we don't have a fixed rate bond market. To encourage this, I had given a suggestion that let the banks, who are actually now the leading players in the power sector finance, let them go for a long-term bond issue. Obviously, they have to pay a higher cost than the bank deposits. So to compensate for that, let us give an exception from CRR, SLR cost. So at about 125 basis points, straight away they gain, and this benefit can be passed on to the investors. And this will encourage the banks to go for long-term financing. Even now, RBI rules does not prevent them from raising long-term bonds, but then obviously they can't do it because when you raise long-term bonds and you have to put you meet the 30% or 26% CRR, SLR commitments, then obviously, that becomes cost-wise not attractive, neither for the borrower nor for the banks. So this already started. I mean, banks already started doing this. The idea of my suggestion was that, we should also encourage ultimately the retail bond market. Right now, what the banks are doing is they are going to same LIC and other pension funds and taking this money and keeping this 125 basis points for themselves. Ideally for our country, we need to develop the retail bond market, and for which they'll have to pass on this cost to the retail investors. That probably will come later. But more on the 5x25 scheme, which many people now accept that this is the savior, of investments, of labor, of employment, of capacities, etc. The issue was, when I was, before taking up this job, I was with the State Bank of India. I was handling the entire project finance part of it and the corporate banking. I realized at that time that, when you finance, normally banks, all of us have been trained for the last 50 years, saying that your deposits are normally average 5 years, so don't lend more than 10 years. That was all right when the economy was small. When the economy became larger and the project became 6,000, 10,000, 20,000 crores, and implementation itself took 4-5 years, asking a developer to pay back in 7-8 years was such a big project was simply not viable. Developers signed up because they had no other option. So they would sign up, and after the first sign of once percentage fall in GDP or a cash flow problem or a little bit of fall in the traffic, they will come and say, restructure my account. So what were the lenders seeing? Lenders were seeing increasing pools of restructured accounts in every single portfolio, and they had almost come to a stage where they were not willing to lend. So I've been telling RBI that this is this will ultimately kill project finance. We need to learn to finance, over the asset life. This hotel, for example, there's no point asking them to pay back in 7 years when we know the hotel will survive for 30 years. So if you allow them for 30 years, or 25 years, let us say, 85% of that, automatically the repayment becomes half. Their cash accrual goes up, their valuation goes up. They can even work with lower rates. Like road project can work with lower tariffs, power project can work with lower tariffs. They need not charge the customer so much to pay in such a short time. For the banks, the repayment, the restructuring risk goes away. For the developer, the value option IRR goes up. For the customer, the tariffs goes down. So this is a win-win for everybody. Now, the secret trick was to bring the cash credit principle into the term lending. Now, cash credit, what happens? Suppose a bank is giving a cash credit to this hotel. They have no problem renewing it for 30 or 40 or 50 years, but it is taken as a 1-year loan. It is sanctioned as a 1-year loan. At the end of 1 year, it is renewed either by the same bank or somebody else. You bring the same principle into term lending. You allow a repayment of 25 or 30 years, so the repayment is for the borrower is very little. But for the loan lender, it is a 5-year loan. At the end of 5 years, whatever is outstanding, just refinance a new loan, either by the same lenders or by new lenders. So for the asset book, a liability book of the bank, it is shown as a 5-year loan. And the banks are not going to close down after 10 years. Banks are going to continue, so there is no harm in this. So I was able to convince and get this circular issued. Now this is, I think banks are in the process of implementing it. This is completely changed. When a developer knows that he has got enough time to pay back and there is very little chance of an account becoming NPA, because you must understand from next year onwards, There is no difference between restructured account and NPA account. So if a developer is asked to pay back in 7 years and his account becomes restructured or NPA next year, obviously his entire business gets affected. So nobody would put money into any projects if you don't change this. So that, fortunately, I think now that problem is taken care of. This is a very, very critical change. I don't think many people have understood the significance of this, except the developers, of course. Many of them are coming and saying this is a game changer. I hope this will actually encourage the people to put money into the project much more, and it will definitely is going to save thousands of jobs. The second point issue what I wanted to was this Power Producers Association issue, where, you know, we all know that a number of projects are getting stranded, and, you know, about close to 400,000 crores worth of loans of banks are in trouble. So when the Finance Minister asked me to chair this committee, I approached this only on one presumption. A lot of people used to blame banks, saying, for you lend recklessly, why did you lend to project finance? Many people say that developers have mismanaged the project, they are not managed well, they have overpriced it, overcosted, they have siphoned money away, a lot of issues. But I approach this from the simple philosophy, saying that you can blame the banks or you can blame the developers, but India as a country, we cannot afford to squander away capacities built up as long as the project is viable. Because if a capacity is destroyed, replacing that cost will now about 3 or 4 times, which means the tariffs will be huge. Second thing is, in power sector, replacing those capacities take another 3 or 4 years. So what happens to our demand for power? What happens to our Make in India campaign? Now all this has to be really looked into. So capacity protection was very important, and that's how I approached it. So all the suggestions which I given is based on that. You know, for example, part of this 5x25 scheme, I had requested that, you know, we should also make it for the past projects. Earlier, RBI had said that it's only applicable for future projects. When it's for future projects, what happens? Actually, the people who really need support is the projects already implemented, who are actually struggling. And if you don't support them, they will permanently at a disadvantage vis-a-vis the future projects. And if these capacities get destroyed because they are not able to pay back, the banks will take a hit, and there will be no further new developers. You know, India has got not many developers. So if all the developers get into problem, they will not be able to implement any new projects. So it was very critical that this will be given to past projects, which RBI has kindly agreed since then. I had also given a lot of suggestions. For example, like LC instead of 3 years, make it 5 years, because, you know, the project implementation is very long. So you need to give a longer period. And then, you know, for example, telecom industry, we know, when I finance a telecom industry, we know that for the first 5-6 years there is going to be a loss. So that loss is built into the project cost. It is divided into equity and debt, and there is no issue with that. In power projects, what happens is, we really don't know what happens. After the project starts operation, suddenly Coal India says, instead of 80%, I can only give 50% coal. The Discom says, instead of buying 80%, I will only buy 50%, I have no money. Instead of giving a 10-year PPA, I will only give a 2-year PPA. You know, with all this, the lenders and the developers sometimes come to know the problems only after the project starts. When the banks want to finance this, because we know that in the long term this has to be protected, and this loan already given has to be taken care of, and the capacity needs to be protected. But when the lenders try to give them additional finance, RBI will call it restructuring. So I told RBI, this is not really, if you can allow in one industry because you know upfront, another industry you come to know only later, but actually what you are doing is the same thing. So don't call it restructuring. So there are so many suggestions which are given, which all of this, I don't have the time to discuss it now. There are about 22, 23 major changes we are recommending. And the report has gone to RBI. I think they are examining it. I'm sure they will take a good look at it. We'll probably be discussing with them also. Now coming to the crisis part of it. The major issue which I feel is that once the Basel III comes in, currently, you know, all the projects are financed mostly by banks. We are never bothered to develop an alternative financing system. We had institutions in the past like IFC, IDB and all, which all became banks or converted to NBFCs. We don't have an alternative infrastructure financing mechanism now. Once the Basel III comes in, the banks will simply say that we have limited capital, we cannot expose our capital to unrated projects. And the rating agencies will say, unless the project is completed, we cannot give a rating. So that means for 3 or 4 years, banks will have to take 100% exposure on capital to these power projects, which no bank will be willing to do it. Already in Europe and the Western world, you find the project banks are stepping back from project financing, but they have fortunately alternate means of financing like bond market and so many other institutions. So this is a crisis. Within next 2 or 3 years, we need to build alternative means of financing. For example, PFC or REC or NIFCL or probably will have to become much, much bigger. Not only in power finance, in all infrastructure sectors. We need to develop bond markets. We need to get in more capital into these kind of organizations. So this is a serious issue which I have flagged this to government. I think this is getting some attention now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, I think, for that very good overview. Before I move on, I must say, as a developer, I do feel a great relief from this 525 or these measures which have just been taken, because many projects which were probably non-viable projects or borderline projects, they have become viable because of these. And there are many, many of them. So I'm sure, you know, there are many people in the room who would probably be the beneficiaries of it. But I'm sure, you know, this will not be sufficient, and maybe there are more lessons to be, you know. So maybe let me go to Ajay and ask, given your experience of both foreign banks where you have worked and of course now in Indian Bank in infrastructure, can you suggest something, keeping the objectives very clear, that interest cost should be low, tenure if possible should be high, and obviously there should be depth in the market, because given this 100 gigawatts of solar plus rest of the targets, or let's say target for next 5-year plan itself being more than 100 gigawatts, I think we do need really some very deep markets or maybe new markets.
Sure. So first of all, Nair sir, thank you so much for your contribution. I think I totally agree with you that some of these suggestions that have come in last 3-4 months are really path-breaking and unprecedented. And I'm sure some of the other suggestions that you're talking about, if they're implemented, that will go a long way in creating a healthy ecosystem in the market. Though it's not going to solve all the problems. And one of the problems I do want to highlight before I come to your question, Sushilji, is that you know, we can talk about financial innovation, financial structuring, but all this is only applicable if the fundamental credit underwriting is in place. What I mean by that is that some of the factors which are beyond the control of promoters or developers, and some of them are within their control. Now, even if, let's say, obviously government will have to give a push to control the extraneous factors, such as, you know, environmental clearances, land acquisition, which all the right noises we are hearing, and hopefully this trailer is good, the movie will also be good. But there also has been, I would like to even blame the banking system to some extent, with your permission, Nair Saab, that when we have underwritten the projects, I'm just talking about banking community in general, I don't think that levels of underwriting standards were followed. So it's not totally okay to blame the extraneous system. There are some problems with our underwriting as well. If Coal India was committing that I will give coal to everybody, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that they will not be able to, you know, supply this coal. And some of those companies did take a call saying that the math doesn't add up, so we are not going to go into thermal. So I think somewhere even banks have to have had that discipline. So now coming back to the question that Sushilji specifically asked about what can be done. So again I stick to that fundamental underwriting has to improve, and once the foundation is strong, then you can do financial engineering. There are hundreds of ways of managing that. I worked in US in securitization space. So once you have a pool of cash flow, you know, it is certain, it is, you know, long, you can always do, you know, pooling, you can do risk diversification. A typical toll road in West sees 3 to 4 securitizations in a lifetime. And once the project is made, it's purely a debt play. There's no longer, you know, an equity play, as we have seen. And Nair Saab very correctly put it, projects that are taking interest rate risk are not project, that's not project finance. Because you can get into an NPA situation just because the base rate of the bank moved up from 10 to 13, as he just mentioned, and that's a huge swing. That's a huge swing. And it is a shame that we don't have, even today, every conference you go, you talk about depth of bond market, how to create bond market, and several things government has tried to do, including IFCL. They came up with a partial credit guarantee scheme, where they said, okay, we'll give the first loss guarantee to an operating project to take its rating to AA. At AA level, the bond market is relatively liquid. Tenor obviously, would be an issue, but still. So that is what IFCL did approve 5, 6, maybe even more if you correct me, transactions, and we did the second such deal in toll road space under the pilot scheme. The markets obviously didn't do well, and so not even I think single bond has been placed even after these approvals. So there is something fundamentally wrong beyond just financial engineering. And so there we were just discussing about there are pots of cash sitting with these insurance companies, but there are some knots that need to be untied. And Nair sir, we will request you, I was just talking to you over tea, that some negative net worth company, insurance companies cannot invest. Now just based on the depreciation policy you follow, the toll roads which are like 20-25 year concessions in the initial years, even if they are operating, otherwise having cash accrual, will have negative net worth. So insurance companies will not put in money, not because the project is not viable. The project is viable, just because there is one knot somewhere which says that negative net worth, so insurance company cannot. So some of these knots, if they can be untied, they will unlock some capital. So I think I'd like to stop at that without going into much details beyond that. Because
Okay, thanks. Dr. Singh, maybe you can use your experience as a lender and say where we could probably do some changes or suggest some changes which can deepen this market and improve your fund flow to the development sector.
Actually, first of all, the 525 news is definitely a good news. So there is cause for celebration. But along with that, it's not so good news for the renewable players because the threshold level has been kept at 500 crores. So I really have not seen any renewable project as of now which crosses 500 crore level. So probably when we are talking about, and one thing in renewable is very important is that it's a fixed cost project. It doesn't have a variable and fixed cost. So if you are able to kind of spread the tenor, the IRR also improves and it helps the tariffs to a great extent. So probably I think this would be, we have in fact through some of the Chamber of Commerce, we have tried to flag up this issue with the government and RBI. Probably they will look at it. And coming back to, in fact, the whole atmosphere is quite upbeat in the country, so no denying that. And I'm sure whatever we are talking, quite a bit of that could get fructified in coming years. So there's a lot of opportunity. To back this opportunity, we have to have proper funding in place. And of course, as Mr. Nair was mentioning about a lot of innovations which he has suggested in the schemes, but to have that kind of a fund flow happening, for example, when you're talking about 1 lakh megawatt in solar and you're talking about slightly less figure in wind energy, and then of course thermal hopefully after the coal block allocation should also take off, the kind of investment which is required. The present structure doesn't provide that kind of an investment vehicle. So you have to have that kind of mechanism in place that you are able to draw this kind of capital. One is of course policy, because money, as we say, is covered. It goes to place where the risk is less. So the policy part has to be first confronted, and if the policy is placed, the money goes there. Good thing is that thanks to the present government, a good upbeat climate has been built in the minds of international investors. That's a very good thing which has happened. I can share my experience because we have been writing to a lot of DFIs for giving us loans. And in fact, last 1 or 2 years, we had not had much breakthrough. But some of the mails which I had written about a year back started getting responded now. So sometimes I got surprised whether I have written a mail to the person, but then I tried to connect. So that's the scenario change which has happened. Not only that, spreads also are starting to come down for India. So country risk is also now so we have to have that mechanism that this kind of upbeat atmosphere or climate which we have been able to create, that we should be able to capitalize. A couple of things. One is, of course, debt is very important, but the equity also has to come, because we have to have equity, huge equity inflows happening to meet that kind of infrastructure requirement. And for that, we have to have a very progressive tax structure in place. Lot of private equity players do want to come in India, but they want to come through, they want to put their equity through CCD route or NCD route. Now, Indian banks are not very comfortable dealing with some, exotic products. So you start feeling very uncomfortable. Now, the private equity player says that we do this because, if I take the repatriation through dividend route, I have to pay higher dividend tax. Whereas if I do it through the withholding tax route, that is through a debenture route, I have to pay a lower tax. So these kind of anomalies need to be corrected in the system. Also, in fact, some time back we talked about having IDF's infrastructure debt fund, and we allowed two routes to be there. One was the mutual fund route. IFCL has also gone through mutual fund route. Another route which allowed was the NBFC route. And in the NBFC route, we said that this will be allowed to projects which have a concession agreement. Now, as on date, concession agreement is available only in some of the road projects. So power is totally out of it. So high time that the scheme is revisited. Probably we recognize power purchase agreements as concession agreement and take a call there. Also, it's very important that, both co-speakers, Mr. Nair, have talked about a very vibrant bond market, and a lot of capital is blocked with Provident Fund and insurance institutions, and they have this threshold level of not investing below AA. Now, AA, if you look for in India, set aside, greenfield projects, even the existing projects, private sector, very, very few private sector would qualify to get AA status. So this money doesn't flow into private sector at all. The whole money goes into either the government bonds, government securities, or it goes into papers brought by public sector. So there is too much of crowding of investment. So earlier government thought about bringing tax-free bonds, but then this tax-free bonds also went to public sector. So this is all crowding of investment. So private sector has to have a space. So these are certain policy measures which need to be corrected. And as I said, the background is very much there, and people are upbeat about India. If a little bit of changes, tweaking happens here and there, we'll be able to raise this kind of capital. Thank you.
Thanks. I think that's very helpful. I have now two very simple requests, which I think will unleash the development of the capacity that we are talking about. One, the first one, I think I'll say a little greedy, because we have been paying interest rates in the range of 14% or so. Thanks to the initiatives you suggested and have been taken, I think, and maybe macroeconomic effects, this 14 may come to maybe 12, 11, but not below. So can we aim at something like, which is in single digits, so maybe, shaving off some more cost on the interest rate? That's one. Second, back of envelope calculation itself shows that the power exposure required in next few years will be 3 to 4 times the current power exposure of whole of the lending sector. Because we are talking about, 1 lakh gigawatts, 1 lakh megawatts of solar, similar, I think, capacity built up in the conventional as well as other small inputs. So we are talking about, I guess, probably 10 lakh crores or 7 to 10 lakh crores kind of number, I'll say, which is far more than what we can do. So specifically, do you have something which we can say, can achieve these two? Because then this goal becomes much more, reachable, looks much more achievable. So there's something.
No, let me answer your first question about the interest rates. See, the interest rates is, of course, everybody is telling RBI that it's time you lower the rates. But in any economy, the interest rates has to be, above the inflation rate. If you don't have the interest rate above the inflation rate, what happens is the money will not come into savings, money will go into land, money will go into gold, and money will go out of the country, as it has happened in India in the past. So your savings rates could fall, and in a country like India, you cannot afford to have the falling saving rates, because then there will be no further investments. So For interest rates to come down, inflation has to come down. Inflation has to come down on a consistent basis. For inflation to come down, deficit financing has to come down. Supply side improvement has to take place. Policy improvement has to take place. So this is the cycle everybody has to follow. Otherwise, you can simply bring the interest rate down because the interest rates want to do that, but then that benefit will not last you for some time. Your own investments will go and get into problem. So that is one thing all of us must keep in mind. I think that is going to happen now because inflation is now under control. I think this new government is taking a lot of steps to bring down the deficit financing also. And I am sure over this period you will find, I hope at least, my feeling is that interest rates will start coming down soon. Not to the extent of single digit as you are expecting, but possibly somewhere close to that. Let us all pray that this will happen. So many good things are happening. I think this will also happen. The second issue was about the funding. I agree. This is what I was saying. This is a problem that once the banks themselves are not big enough. Indian banks are not really big when you look at internationally. Even State Bank of India is only 50 or 60 in the global hierarchy. And India, when the economy is growing, the banks are not growing at the same speed. Unlike in China, when the economy grew, banks also grew very fast. Within 10 years, Chinese banks from nowhere, the first 6 of the top 10 banks were Chinese. So we are not been able to do that. So we definitely need to find alternative means of financing. In fact, when you talk about banking, one point Mr. Gupta made, that there was a lot of mistakes in the part of banks in infrastructure financing. So one of these sessions where I was speaking, they were saying that why did the bank lend to infrastructure at all? When you didn't have the people, you didn't have the talent. You started lending in 2007-8. And I was the largest lender to infrastructure sector when I was at State Bank of India. So I said, fine, I agree that we made the mistake. Where do we have the freedom to recruit the kind of talent for project appraisal? We didn't have any background. We were asked to start something and we did it. But I just had to remind the audience, I would like to remind you also today, that if the banks are not lent to power sector in 2007-8 and all that, we will not be sitting in an air-conditioned room today. So let us remember that. So it was very important that the PSU banks came and did all those things, the roads and the power sector plants and the hydro plants, everything came up. Now we all learn from the mistakes, so I think when we are learned from the mistake, it becomes more difficult to lend. That is another problem. So anyway, this is a very important point what you made, because our lending institution today currently cannot afford to lend. Because I'm not talking about power sector. Government is planning to spend about $1 trillion in the next 5 years, which is the minimum we require for reasonable growth of infrastructure. Assuming that 50% of that, which is a minimum, has to come from private sector, that is $500 billion. 75% has to come from debt, that is $350 billion. That is, if you translate into rupees, it is 20 lakh crores. And when you know that in 70 years, the infrastructure lending of all the banks have reached 8 lakh crores, how can we lend 20 lakhs, another 20 lakh crores in the next 5 years? It's impossible. But there is a huge amount of money outside India wanting to enter India, because the returns there are very low, and they all expect with the right policy, India will give them an opportunity to get a higher return. There are two issues to this. One is, of course, looking at India's rating, they want at least 4%, let us say, US dollar return. With the current hedging costs, it comes to a little more than the current rupee cost. So, and we don't have the market to offer hedge more than 7 years. So overseas lenders find it very difficult. So we have to consciously work towards developing the hedging market, where discussions are going on with RBI. So, but again, one more thing which I spoke in one meeting and which Mr. Gadkari had separately discussed with me, he liked the idea. I had suggested that, any economy, the biggest responsibility, the capacity, as well as the responsibility for building infrastructure is always with the government. But the government, when it creates infrastructure, ideally government should not hold on to it. So for example, a government company, any government company, when they are best equipped to create the infrastructure, to acquire the land, to get the approvals, they have the technical quality to build power projects, hydropower projects. And ideally, once the foreign funds which are willing to come to India, they will not come here to create infrastructure. They will come for holding it long term with a lower rate of return, because they have long-term money. So ideally, any government body or state government or any other body which creates infrastructure should sell it at a profit after it is created and use the money to recycle to create new projects, new infrastructure. That is a government responsibility. That way you can also attract substantial amount of foreign money into the country. Because they will come for post-risk. They will not come to accept the project risk. So this is a model I think we need to start looking at very seriously.
I think that's interesting. Now, one thought from what you're saying, I think it's a very valid point. Your cost of funds cannot come down to single digits by itself, but you do have.
I'm not saying it cannot come down. If inflation comes to 1%, it can obviously come to 3%.
Yeah, so that's probably much more laid out in future. But let's say the projects which will be conceptualized today cannot be considered on the single-digit ones. But you do have a good idea, and you do have a good product where you're talking about securitization by credit enhancement. So, is it possible to structure something where this hedge and other things which you have mentioned could be partly taken by government or government entities because they'll be AAA? And they can probably take part of it.
Yes, there was
maybe a revenue stream.
Yeah, there was an example when we went into the current account deficit issue. If you remember a couple of years back, RBI deliberately underwrote FCNB deposit at a very low rate of hedge, 3% or 4%, for up to a particular quantum. And about lot of dollars came in, and then that current account deficit problem was solved. One thing probably we can look at it is you say that $35 or $50 billion worth of foreign currency borrowings can be hedged at a particular percentage, let's say 3 or 4%. And then that money comes in, automatically the premiums will come down. That is one policy, but then RBI has to look at it. No, because I don't know whether it is acceptable to RBI, because they will have a different view on this, because our foreign reserves, they may say, are not meant for this. So that is one option available. Otherwise, of course, our current account deficit has to come down, and the rate of interest has come down, and the foreign hedging costs will come down. And with the policy improvement, etc., India becomes more attractive. The more the money comes in, the more easier it is to hedge.
That's right. So the other thing that I am asking you now is more because you led this sector in multiple roles. Is it feasible to open new channels of this funding, maybe through, let's say, the PF money or through the retail bonds, by using couple of suggestions that
retail bonds, which is the suggestion which I had given. Now it is for the to ensure that the banks raise at least 20% of this bond money through retail, because banks have the retail network.
20%.
In fact, IFCL and the PFC and REC and all, we don't have the retail network. So it will, the banks probably can start developing this product through retail network. This can also bring a lot of cash which is outside the system into the bond market. If you have 5,000, 10,000, 25,000 rupees bonds, and you list it so that the investor can always exit it. Each series A, Series B, Series C can be listed. And there is one option available. So that I don't know whether they can, I'm sure the movement will take place in that direction.
Maybe I'll ask both the friends if they have any reactions to these 2-3 very specific suggestions, or maybe provide similar suggestions to achieve these two ends again.
One of the suggestions that was in my mind is that these projects, some of the projects which are facing even problems purely because interest rates have moved from 10 to 13%, and they are temporary in nature, seasonality dependent. Could there be, let's say, an entity which is led by IFCL and supported by banks, that would fund a junior sliver, a junior tranche, and which could pick the interest, which means that if the interest could be capitalized and paid later. So that will help in otherwise what happens is entire 3,000 crores or 4,000 crores becomes an NPA. If you take a junior sliver out, and which is charging higher interest, we have professionals who can manage that risk. So won't this help in reducing the NPA in the system?
Yes.
And only an organization like IFCL can lead, and the banks can probably be equity investors in such a vehicle.
Actually, there is, because just 2-3 weeks back, I had a discussion with Mr. Gadkari on this, because he pointed out that in road projects, you see, it's very skewed. First 4-5 years, there is hardly any cash flow much, and after that, it suddenly jumps up.
Exactly.
So the problem is in the first 4 or 5 years.
Exactly.
How do you address this? Because he doesn't have the cash flow to finance this. So one, of course, is that we can load into the project cost, then again the interest cost goes up. But there is a particular product called a sub-debt. which RBI permits all of us to lend it, where I can even capitalize the interest. That means the developer need not pay even the interest for the first 4-5 years. So this is treated as almost quasi-equity. Now, I have given a paper back to the Ministry of Transport saying that let us instruct that all projects, road finance projects, automatically will carry, say, let us say, 10% or 20% of the debt should be sub-debt. So that all projects will have these benefits. And RBI does not prevent sub-debt. Every lender, not only IFCL, every bank can also do this. So if you make it a part of the project financing cost itself, automatically when the loan gets sanctioned, 10% or 20% of that gets sanctioned as a sub-debt. And this benefit comes to every project.
See, so banks have lent sub-debt, but they have not been very comfortable picking the interest, where the interest, even interest is not being paid.
No, that is okay. So, when you know that this is the way it is to be done, and ultimately it can be, in the long run it's beneficial for that, because you save your asset becomes much safer that way.
So what you're saying is that banks can technically do it,
yes,
as per RBI regulations.
You can imagine from next year onwards, when RBI is going to say there is no restructuring, the moment it is restructured, it becomes NPA. It is much better for the banks to lend like this to prevent the possibility of NPA.
Okay, we'll explore that, sir. I think I'm not aware that banks could lend with picking the interest, where even interest is not.
Sub-debt allows, RBI allows capitalization.
Yeah, that is a capitalization.
Okay, for the long run.
Yeah. Adding to that, actually, in fact, apart from the sub-debt, if we can have an NCD structure, a lot of time, we can have an NCD structure with kind of a bullet redemption. So maybe for 1 year or 2 year you issue bonds, which would be part of the debt, and then that could be redeemed after 2 years. So it's automatic capitalization. So this route also could be tried, and banks could postpone their interest rate payments. But also it's very important that, for infrastructure retail bond market to develop is that earlier we had this concept of infrastructure bonds which was discontinued and which was used for the purposes of taxation benefit, which used to be over and above that 1 lakh ceiling limit which we had. So probably that needs to be restored because there is retail investment has to have some kind of an incentive for investing in infrastructure space. So that's needed to be restored, and also a green bond market is what we would need to have in this country. Globally, we have a lot of green bond market, and since we are talking about so much of investment in renewable space, so a green bond market has to happen, and it has to be treated little differently in terms of both taxation angle and also from the angle of risk weightage. What kind of risk weightage we assign? Maybe to renewable projects, a risk weightage could be, on a completed renewable project, could be 50%, as it is allowed for PPP projects.
Two areas I would like to respond to what is mentioned just now. One is for NCD, the problem, we examined this. NCD, the problem is most banks, NCD is like an investment. So most banks have these investment policies which say NCD should have a minimum rating. So many of the projects will become ineligible for NCD. So that is one of the reasons why sub-debt, wherever sub-debt, those kind of issues are not there. Secondly, regarding the infrastructure bond, that is precisely what I had suggested in the last budget. It was accepted and it has come. Now for financing infrastructure, subject to certain guidelines, incremental basis, banks can issue these infrastructure bonds. That is where the CRR, SLR benefits have been given. Actually, there are nothing preventing banks from doing infrastructure bonds at all. But they were not doing it because of the CRR, SLR costs, which will add to them even normal rupee lending. It will be very costly. So now with this benefit, banks will be able to lend at 1%, 1.25% lower than the normal lending rate for project finance at a fixed rate. See, more than the interest cost itself, it is a fixed rate which is very critical, because you cannot start a project like Mr. Gupta said at X% and it goes up to Y% in 2 or 3 years, your project goes collapse. That is not project financing at all. So in India, I think we were doing project financing entirely wrongly because banks had no experience. We approached project finance like any other term loan, which is wrong. First of all, asking them to repay in 7 or 8 years, which is wrong. Asking them to pay different interest rate every year, which is again wrong. This is not the way project financing is done world over at all. So most of the pain is actually self-inflicted.
So thanks. I think, thanks all of you. I think it has been, I'm at least enjoying it very much because it has been so educative. We could go on, but I guess we are short of time. I'm sure, like, I have a couple of questions. I'm sure some of the audience may have questions as well. So maybe, you know, after the session, we could probably, you know, approach you and say a couple of things. So with that, I'd like to bring this session to the close.
Thank you.
And at this point, as I thank our panelists and our moderators, may I request Mr. B.K. Sinha, President Coal, Hindustan Power, to please join us on stage and present a memento to each one of our panelists. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bhagat, for moderating the session. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. May I request Mr. Sinha to please join us for a photo opportunity? Thank you, gentlemen. And as I thank each one of you for joining us, may I remind all of you to please fill up the feedback forms and submit them at the registration desk before you head out. And once again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us, and we truly hope that you take back a lock with you. Once again, thank you on behalf of the team of ET Edge.